Will Black Americans get reparations? Reparations to make amends for how our government has treated them for centuries. But how would that work? How much would that cost? Will it happen under a Biden-Harris presidency? To all of those questions, for this story, I'm comfortable saying, I don't know.
Committee on the Judiciary, Subcommittee on the Constitution, Civil Rights, and Civil Liberties will come to order. Mr. Coates, thank you for being here, and you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Yesterday, when asked about reparations, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell offered a familiar reply.
I don't think reparations for something that happened 150 years ago for whom none of us currently living are responsible is a good idea. No one currently alive was responsible for that.
This rebuttal proffers a strange theory of governance, that American accounts are somehow bound by the lifetime of its generations. If I injure you, the injury persists even after I actually commit the act. If I stab you, you may suffer complications long after that initial actual stabbing. That's the case with African Americans. There are people well within the living memory of this country that are still suffering from the after effects of that.
Thank you very much. I yield.
Far from Washington, down a trail into the woods near Shannon, Georgia, you'll find Zuber Cemetery, in memory of African Americans buried here, some free, some enslaved at time of death.
And I saw that, I just got so emotional. I had just tears like, oh my goodness, these people are named after me, and these are my ancestors.
Xanthia Zuber spent years even using DNA to trace her family's ancestry to this cemetery, to slaves.
I get so mad at the slave owner, I just want to go and dig them up and strangle them, you know? I mean, I really get so mad, and then I think, wow, just all the stuff they went through. I can't even imagine.
Finding her ancestors and their graves is a clear way to honor them, but ask Xanthia about reparations, and the answer gets more murky.
I've had conversations with very few family members because most of them weren't interested in me doing the family tree. I don't think they really wanted to bring up all this slavery stuff, and they just didn't want to talk about it. But the ones that did, they would say that they thought it was too late for reparations. They didn't see how in the world it was going to work. How in the world do you do reparations now?
And that's the thing, just asking the question can be difficult. No one probably knew that better than the late Congressman John Conyers. He first introduced legislation to study reparations in 1989, and he did every year until he retired in 2017. Most often, the response to House Bill 40 was this.
We get into a non-dialogue, silence.
But last summer was anything but silent.
What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now!
Black Lives Matter protests brought a reckoning on race in America. But when it came to reparations, I would see a sign here or there, but not many. So even amid monumental social change, was the idea of reparations just in the background? Well, I did a Google Trends search, and it confirmed what I felt, that even when Black Lives Matter overshadowed nearly everything, reparations barely registered. A Reuters Ipsos poll from the same time captured a similar picture. Just 1 in 4 Americans supported reparations, and the support was heavily divided along racial lines, with just 1 in 10 white Americans on board. And why is that? Well, I think it's because it's difficult for people to support something they don't really understand. And then I remembered May 2019, almost exactly 1 year to the day before the death of George Floyd. I was in Las Vegas at the Emerge Festival when I heard Patrisse Cullors,
what can we do from here?
Talk about the moment she co-founded the movement, now known as Black Lives Matter.
And I remember seeing those 3 words and putting a hashtag in front of it. I wrote a Facebook note and I said, hey everybody, Alicia and I have started this thing called Black Lives Matter, and I hope it gets bigger than I can ever imagine.
And when Patrisse agreed to talk with me one-on-one after that speech, neither of us knew what the next year would bring. But we did talk about reparations, and that part of the conversation has never aired until now. On the topic of reparations, highly controversial.
I love this topic.
What do you think it is most people don't understand?
Everything. They don't
Nothing about it.
Exactly. I think people.
I'll admit, I have a lot of ignorance about it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding. I think people, when they hear reparations, they're like, oh, we're going to give a group of people millions of dollars, and why? Why would we do that for this group of people? Versus thinking about reparations as a holistic package.
Patrisse told the story of this guy.
Former Chicago Police Commander John Burge.
Burge spent time in jail for orchestrating the torture of dozens of black men over 2 decades in Chicago.
I had never in my life experienced that kind of pain.
Forcing them to confess to crimes they did not commit.
And they built an entire campaign, a decade-long campaign, to get reparations for those men and their families. It didn't just look like a dollar amount. In fact, they wanted the city of Chicago to teach about the torture survivors so that they would never do it again, right? So there's so many examples where reparations has looked like looking at what has harmed an entire community and what will it take to give that community the things that they deserve. Because you can never take back the torture, never take back that time.
Just like Germany couldn't erase the Holocaust, 6 million Jews executed. And in 1952, West Germany began paying reparations to the survivors. Still does. They also began teaching the Holocaust so as never to repeat it. And even in the US, Republican President Ronald Reagan approved reparations for Japanese Americans forced into internment camps during World War II. And even more recently, Asheville, North Carolina approved reparations as investments.
You're one of 2 black councilmen on the board, and yet it passed unanimously. Were you surprised?
No, I'm not surprised. We are in a moment in time that is going to be very transformative.
So there is clear precedent for reparations, and in October, Governor Gavin Newsom made California the first state to officially study reparations.
I hope people recognize we're moving in the right direction.
But will it happen for all black Americans? Well, here's a pretty direct answer from then Senator Kamala Harris.
In the area of reparations for descendants of Africans enslaved. If you elected president, would you sign that bill if it came across your desk?
When I am elected president, I will sign that
bill. Then candidate Biden vowed to the Washington Post to study how reparations may be part of those efforts to address systemic racism. Then fast forward to his acceptance speech.
The African American community stood up again for me. You've always had my back, and I'll have yours.
And on the very same day, Patrisse Cullors sent this letter asking for a meeting with the president-elect and writing, "We want to be heard and our agenda to be prioritized. Black people cannot afford to live through the indifference of a Democrat-controlled government that refuses to wrestle with America's most egregious and damnable shame." A clear nod to reparations. You can read more about Patrisse's thoughts in an article that she wrote for the Harvard Law Review.
Slavery is the original sin.
I would also recommend Into America. It's the podcast of my NBC colleague Tremaine Lee, who dedicated an entire episode to reparations. Those are 2 great places to start if right now you're finding yourself with more questions than when this story began.